Okay, so let's finish up chapter 4, cytoskeleton and cell surfaces. So cytoskeleton, what does that lead you to think? Skeleton is what helps give us structure, gives us support. And so these cells, they're a network of protein fibers. And so that support also, if we didn't have a skeleton, it would be very difficult for us to move because we have to push something against another. And so we think that motility and cellular regulation result when the cytoskeleton interacts with proteins called motor proteins. We'll talk a little bit about those here in a second. So different parts of fibers. Microfilaments support the cell's shape. Intermediate filaments reinforce the shape and anchor organelles. Microtubules give the cell rigidity and act as tracks for organelle movement. So when the organelles want to move, it's microtubules. So here's your graphic. You have your actin subunit, the microfilament, and then your fibrous subunits, and then your microtubules. So some protists have flagella and cilia that they use in locomotion. Even cells of multicellular organisms have them for different reasons. Cells that sweep mucus out of our lungs have cilia, and animal sperm have flagella. So here's the cilia inside your lungs. So when you're coughing up that mucus, these are the cilia. It's kind of constantly pushing stuff, working stuff out of the lungs, keep your lungs free so they can breathe. And here's a picture of a sperm, a really long flagella that works in kind of a whip-like motion to help that guy swim upstream. And they do that. This is what gives it kind of the rigidity to move. You have these microtubules and these radial spokes and these different proteins. And so here's kind of a close-up of just that cutoff where you can see that under a microscope. Now flagella are much longer than cilia. And they propel through undulation. Think of, let's see, an otter, how they kind of bound up and down. Or if you cut the legs off a cheetah and watched it run, how it would bound up and down. That would be kind of undulating. Or whip-like motion, kind of whipping it back and forth. And where cilia, more like the oars of a crew boat. It's more of a back and forth motion. And flagella and cilia have common structure and kind of the same mechanism behind it that help them move. And they both have the microtubules. They're wrapped in an extension of the plasma membrane. And it's you get this ring of 9 microtubule doublets, and they surround a central pair of microtubules. So if we went back to our picture, we'd see that kind of that 9-2 pattern, and this is common throughout all cilia and flagella. And then they're anchored in the basal body with 9 microtubule triplets. Okay, so there's your
flagella or singular flagella.
I'm going to pass through that. Sorry, forgot to delete that slide for online. So you have these bending motor proteins, and this is how your cilia and flagella move. And these are attached, the bending motor proteins, they're attached to, and they exert that sliding force on the adjacent doublet. And then the arms release and reattach a little further along and repeat time after time, and that's kind of this walking over and over again that causes those microtubules to bend. And this is really interesting. In developed countries over the last 50 years, there's been a decline in sperm quality, the ability of sperm to move, the ability for this to happen. And what it's correlated with Obviously, we haven't. We think the cause is there's good evidence to suggest the cause is environmental chemicals. All the chemicals we use producing textiles getting pushed into our environment. It changes at a cellular level how these sperm are made and causes problems. So you have genetic disorders that interfere with the movement of sperm and cilia. And primary cilaria dyskinesia, struggling to spit that out, is a rare disease, and it's characterized by recurrent infections of the respiratory tract and in-motile sperm. It just means the flagella or cilia can't move or function properly. So there's your 9-2 pattern again. So we also have this extracellular matrix, and these are all the kind of the outside support for the cell. It keeps your cells together, your tissues together, supports plasma membrane, and so it's attached and then binds to the membrane proteins, and those membrane proteins are called integrins. And those integrins are over the entire plasma membrane, and they take those microfilaments and connect them to that cytoskeleton. And so here's your graphic. So you have your extracellular fluid and your glycoprotein complex, and they have those long polysaccharides and your collagen fibers, and inside you have the microfilaments, and all this helps give structure and maintain shape because the plasma membrane really has no rigidity in it. So cells talk to one another. Yeah, they don't have vocal cords, but they still talk to one another through chemicals. And so they talk to one another, hey, let's make more cells, or let's stop making cells, or whatever, through things called a tight junction. They prevent leakage of the extracellular fluid. The anchoring junctions, they keep cells together in sheets. And gap junctions, they allow molecules to flow between the cells, to move in and out of the cell. And so plant cells have that rigid cell wall. And so that rigid cell wall provides kind of that skeletal support and helps keep that plant upright. And it's of course made of cellulose, that sugar cellulose that we can't digest. And so plant cells have those junctions. If you remember when we looked at a plant cell, it had those little holes, and that's called the plasmodesmata, and that serves as communication where chemicals move in and out. And here's an example of a plant cell, and so you have these junctions right there, and so cytoplasm can move in and out, and they can communicate that way and say, hey, we're doing good, we need to grow more or not, or whatever. So eukaryotic cells, here's kind of a review, just a quick back overview of what we just did. Eukaryotic cell structures can be grouped by genetic control, manufacturing, distribution, and breakdown, energy processing, and structural support. So blueprints, manufacturing, distributing, breaking down the parts that are going to help make, manufacturing what the blueprints say, distributing what that says, or breaking down materials so you can make more, the energy processing with the mitochondria, and structural support, movement, and between parts. And so here is kind of a graphic of the different ones and what they do. So if I were you, I'd kind of, I'd even maybe print this out and have this handy for the test. And here it is a little bit larger, so if you print it out, it's easier to see. And so that wraps up chapter 4. wraps up Module 1. You should now be ready to take the test. I hope you're keeping up with the Mastering Biology as well. And once you're done with this, you can move on to Module 2.